Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from everybody who's joining us from the different time zones. I'm Kyril, the coordinator at CNAP Project, and we're excited to welcome you to the Internet Monitoring Action Project, or iMAP, um, launch of the 2023 Internet Censorship Report. Um, the project itself aims to establish regional and in-country networks that monitor internet interference and restrictions to the freedom of expression online. Together with our network of country partners, and then their partners as well, we carry out the monitoring of internet censorship using the Open Observatory Network Interference, or ONI, detection tools and reporting systems for 10 countries, which are Cambodia, Hong Kong, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Thailand, Timor-Leste, and Vietnam. This is now the second time we've done this report. Um, um, and to uncover internet censorship, um, blocking of websites, instant messaging, and supervision tools such as VPNs and the Onion Router project in these 10 countries. This year, we welcome a new partner for our coverage, which is Timor-Leste. In 2023, it was a critical year of monitoring in our region, as many countries um, recently held their national general elections, and with it, it brings political volatility, changes in government and policies. First, Philippines had their general presidential elections in May 2022, followed by Malaysia's 15th general elections. Thailand in May 2023, Timor-Leste in May, and also Cambodia most recently in July. The transition and transition of power and leadership in the country marks an important point in observing the state of freedom of expression, and gives an indication of the trend of internet freedom or censorship to come. We would especially like to thank the iMAP partners for their amazing job in conducting these tests, sometimes in very trying situations. Also, a shout out to the ONI team for their constant technical support in helping us analyze a lot of the data and explaining or helping us uncover the blocking and censorships that are happening in this region. And also to our funders and donors for making this project happen. And finally, of course, all the measurements that we collect would not be possible without all the volunteers and the public who are using ONI tools and apps to help us collect the data that we need to do the measurements. For this session, you'll be hearing from our team, the amazing Kelly and Cindy Nerliza, on the key findings of the report. And then we'll head on to a panel discussion with our country partners and researchers who are the experts in the state of internet censorship of the countries that they monitor. And today we're honored to have with us our country partners and researchers who are experts in the state of internet censorship for Timor-Leste. We have Fernando Ximenez, who is the co-founder of the Timorese Association for Progressive Media and Technology based in Timor-Leste. We have Kyril Zefri joining us, and he's a specialist on open and secure technology at Engage Media, which is covering the reports on Indonesia and Philippines. And finally, we have our amazing data analyst, Sidi Nurliza Samsudin, who's a technologist at CNAP Project, who has been working on the data and analysis in support of partners for the report. There will be time for the Q&A after the discussion when you hear from the reports as well as insights from our partners. And for now, I'll give the floor to Kelly. Kelly, over to you.
Thank you, Kyril. I would also like to express my appreciation to the team for their support and to all iMAP partners and country researchers for putting in a lot of effort into this project. And of course, also to our donors for supporting our work. Unfortunately, one of our country partner, Div Yang from Center for Internet and Society, expressed his regrets that he could not join us today due to a very immediate and serious emergency. I wish him and pray that he is well right now. In the next few moments, Siti and I will run through about what the iMAP is about, methodology, coverage, and also some key findings. Siti, could you share the screen? So to begin, I will briefly run through what iMAP is about. Siti, could you move to the next slide, please? Yes, and the following slides. So in iMAP, we are trying to establish a regional and in-country networks. So through these networks, we will want to monitor the internet interference and restrictions to the freedom of expression online. We are now covering and monitoring 10 countries in total, which is Cambodia, Hong Kong, China, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Thailand, Timor-Leste, and Vietnam. And I'm happy to introduce some of our partners, which you can see on the screen right now, which is Center for Internet and Society, our country partner in India, Engage Media, who is our partners covering Indonesia and Philippines, Thai Netizen covering for Thailand, API, Advocacy and Policy Institute, who is our partner in Cambodia, and also the Timorese Association, which is covering for Timor-Leste. So UNI is our supporting partners, and we also like to shout out to them. Moving on to the next slide, please. In iMAP, we are trying to do three main focus, which is firstly, to collect data and information. Because using this information, we would like to uncover it by using UNI tools. These UNI tools will help to monitor in the sense of collection of data. Then using the UNI tools, we analyze them. And to do that, we also need the help of the local people who is based in these countries to run the tests. Besides that, we also hope to build a movement and to introduce the concept of internet censorship to them, how it affects our lives and freedom of information and also freedom of expressions. To establish that, we expand the network to our partners, and our partners also expand the network with their local communities. At the same time, we are looking at capacity building because using UNI tools would require some basic knowledge and also some technical literacies. So we first guide our partners in learning how to use the tools. How do you monitor the internet censorship by building and reviewing the test list, and also to analyze the results. Moving on to the next. So some of our ongoing activities, which is right now the country reports that we are sharing, and we are also actively carrying out local partners workshops through the help of our iMAP partners. Besides, we are also looking into translating the UNI Probe app, which is the tool that we are using to capture the measurements and also the country reports. We are also looking into constantly updating and reviewing country-specific test lists. So this test list will require manual editing and some local knowledge as well. Next, please, Siti. What you're looking at right now is the UNI software test. We mentioned that we are using UNI probe tools, and these tools cover the blocking of websites, blocking of instant messaging apps, and also circumvention tools. We can also measure speed and performance through these apps. Next, Siti. So how do we monitor it and collect the data is firstly, we will need to prepare a list of websites called the test list. So this test list is categorized into a global test list, which contains all websites relevant to all countries globally, and also country-specific test list, which is relevant to the country that you are connected to. Say, if I'm in Malaysia, I'll be running the test using the Malaysia country-specific test list. These test lists would need to be maintained regularly to ensure that they are constantly relevant and also capture what is the ongoing issues in the countries, and which is why it requires local knowledge. After collecting these websites and reviewing it, updating them, we will run these tests using UNI Probe app on either mobile or desktops. And these tests would collect the measurements and would be displayed on Uni Explorer, which allows everyone, all users, and also the public to analyze and view the data. Next, please, Siti. I'm going to cover the methodology and coverage of the report. And this report, as mentioned, we're covering 10 countries. In the past report, we do not have India, but in this year, we have India and also Timor-Leste. So the period we are looking at is a 1-year period, beginning from July last year to June this year. So in this report, we'll analyze the confirmed blockings, meaning to say these measurements are confirmed by Uni using their tools, and also further confirmed by heuristics, which is based on further detailing the measurements to ensure that we do not miss out some of the measurements outside of that is not captured by Uni. So besides that, we also look at news reports to see that we are also capturing what is being reported by the news media and verify them. So this itself, we also look at percentage of block and likely block by category. We have the list of websites, and based on this number of websites and the number of measurements, we look at the percentage and to compare each categories to see which one has a higher percentage of block by looking at the measurements from the block confirmed measurements and likely block measurements. So these likely blocks confirm also contain some anomaly measurements and also some of the failed measurements. Next, please, Siti. And we are looking at beginning to look into the key findings. So I will begin with some general observations before passing it to my colleague Siti to run through it.
Sorry, hold on. Let me share again.
Sure, no problem.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank
Can
you,
you
Siti.
see the slides? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I can see it now. So some general observations. Some of the common categories that is blocked in all these 10 countries we'll see is pornography, gambling, PROV stands for provocative attire, date means online dating sites, POLR is political criticism websites, news stands for news media websites. And some of these, in these 6 categories, we see in the following countries, which is India, Indonesia, Cambodia, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam. Some of the less common ones are government websites, which is government-run websites, and GRP is the social media networking tools. MILX stands for the military and also terrorism websites. Hong Kong has a very different from the others in the sense that they do have political criticism and government categories. However, unlike other countries in Southeast Asia, there is very little censorship in, say, pornography and also gambling websites. And Myanmar is very different from the rest in the sense that these 3 categories that you're looking at, the government-run websites has very high censorship detected because it covers websites of the National Unity Government, which is in exile right now. And for social networking sites, which is the only country out of the 10 countries that we're looking at, has this high detection of censorship. We see it covers like the tools used for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and even LinkedIn. As for terrorism and military, these websites covers like ethnic army forces fighting for their national liberation in Myanmar. So Myanmar stands out from the rest of the countries. I also like to mention, despite all this, we do see that in when during political instability period, the censorship continues and heightens, and we see that even if Philippines, the independent news sites and also political criticism sites were being targeted because they were said to be purported to be linked to communists and also terrorist groups. And also in India, even though they also have the common categories with the rest. But we do see a special case where there is a sharp increase in the blocking of VPNs to circumvent censorship. This is because there is have a law that is banning the use of it. And there's also a number of LGBTQ websites found to be blocked by privately owned network firewalls. And further analysis of news website reported to be blocked by UNI also show a little change for last year. So it would, in these 6 countries that is listed, we will need to look at further expansion of the UNI test list to cover more details in the trends. Over to you, Siti.
Thank you, Kelly. So I will briefly talk about the key findings. I think some of them have already been spoken by Kelly. So I will talk about the methods of blockings used by the internet service providers or governments in implementing internet censorship in these 10 countries. So basically, the ones that we have confirmed censorship is through DNS or HTTP tampering. So the countries that are using these 2 methods that we found are Hong Kong, Indonesia, India, Thailand, Myanmar, and Vietnam. It's different. There is a difference between, let's say, Indonesia and India, where they have a lot of ISPs. So it explains why they have different kinds of methods used by their ISPs. For Hong Kong, Thailand, Myanmar, and Vietnam, which have relatively less ISPs, they are using mostly use DNS. Although, for example, like Thailand, their HTTP blocking is mostly for their old websites, which haven't been blocked and unblocked until now. And then there are also countries that are only using DNS. For example, like Malaysia, Philippines, and Cambodia. In Cambodia, their ISPs are they do not show any block page so far. So we are still confirming their block pages, blocking fingerprints based on the let's say the website is unavailable, and for those who are more technical, you would know that it will result in a no domain annex domain error. Whereas for Malaysia and Philippines, there are block pages, and it is quite centralized with where the DNS is redirected to a single IP address that was probably that was set by the government to be the censorship website. So there will be people who access these block websites. They will be directed to this. They will see a block page saying that this web page has been blocked by the so and so government. And then next, also I would like to mention that these are 9 countries. So there is also one that is not here, which is Timor-Leste. So Timor-Leste, we haven't found any censorship so far based on our data, on the UNI's data. In general, the trends during elections period, I believe Kelly has also mentioned this. We have monitored internet censorship during the major elections in the countries under iMAP. So there are 4 elections that were held. Malaysia last year in November. Thailand and Timor-Leste was in May this year, and Cambodia was in July. For these 4 elections, only Cambodia, where we did find confirmed censorship, where independent news websites were found blocked. It was most likely continued blocking since the blocking of news websites since February. Whereas in Malaysia, there are some censorship, although there are also old censorship that hasn't been unblocked since a few years already. And we also found issues with accessing the elections results in Malaysia and in Thailand. In Timor-Leste, we found no censorship, but we saw that there were many failed results, and there were many issues with the users in using the UniPro due to their poor internet connectivity. Next is the new blocking. So I think Kelly has already mentioned that In Cambodia, there were a few websites that were. It was started with the VOD shutdown of VOD in the country. VOD is an independent news outlet there, and then their websites, multiple domains were blocked by the ISPs, together with a few other independent news websites like Cambodia Daily and Radio Free RFA. In India, there was, other than the blocking of VPN mentioned, there was also blocking of several messaging apps. There were the more secure ones like Cuberizer, Enigma, and so on, because they were said to be linked to terrorists in the specific regions like Jammu and Kashmir. And this was also confirmed with UNI's data, where these instant messaging websites were found inaccessible. In Malaysia, since late 2022, specifically before the elections last year in November, the Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission, MCMC, has been blocking independent news and political blogs, including Malaysia Today and Malaysia Now. And latest update, because it wasn't part of the coverage period, so in August until now, there have been more blockings of these kinds of websites that were claimed to be linked to misleading information of fake news. So these were the reasons that the MCMC said they were blocked for. It might not be linked directly, but another update is that Malaysia Now is also an independent news website that they are shutting down, and they claim that the reason is, one of it is the blocking of the website. Next is Philippines. So last year in June 2022, there were blockings of 26 websites with ties to communist groups, and these were also confirmed by UNI's data, where I think about 21 websites were found blocked based on UNI's data, whereas the other websites weren't tested enough to make any conclusion, but we believe they are also blocked. So conclusion and recommendations. This is just a general. You can find the reports where our partners are also making different, more specific recommendations. But this is just general recommendations to all the governments in the region to be transparent in implementing internet censorship. And we also take this opportunity to call for volunteers to contribute to the project. I'll show you how. So if you're interested to contribute, you can install the UniProbe app. You can and do the testing there. You can test for websites there, to test for internet censorship. And if you found anything anomaly or anything that you found suspicious, you can contact us to find out more. You can also contribute to, if you are a developer, you can also contribute to UNI's GitHub at github.com/uni. And if you want to contribute to the test list to ensure that the websites that we test are relevant, and to remove any irrelevant websites, you can also do that through the GitHub and also the UNI's platform of the test list to update the test list. Here is how you can install UniProbe. You can install it on your mobile, on iOS, Android, as well as desktop. And as long as you leave it on in your mobile, there will be measurements taken. So we will, as many measurements, we appreciate as many measurements as we get, because that will ensure more accurate, especially on certain websites and certain days that there might be censorship that we didn't expect. So these are the times where we need a lot of volunteers to help us to get more measurements and data. Thank you. So I will pass it on to Kelly. You can download our reports now on imap.sinarproject.org. Special thanks to UNI and our country partners, API, CIS, Engage Media, Thai Netizen, and Timorese Association. And if there are any questions, you may also type your comment in the chat box. We will answer them later in the Q&A, or you can also email one of us later. Thank you. I will pass it on to Kelly. Yeah.
Thank you, Siti. So now we would like to go into the panel discussions. Looking at the key findings and also having researched all the country reports, I would like to invite over Fernando from the Timorese Association for Progressive Media and Technology, and also Khairul Zafri from Engage Media, who is covering Indonesia and Philippines. Thank you, Khairul, and also Fernando. So looking at this general theme in this Southeast Asia region, so many of us have in recent periods held nationwide elections. The Philippines had the presidential elections back in May 2022. Malaysia had its the 15th general election in November 2022. Thailand and Timor-Leste both have elections in May 2023, and also Cambodia have a very recent one in July. So, question to you, Siti. Having analyzed the data during the Thailand and Malaysia elections, what similarities or differences do you observe when it comes to the patterns of internet censorship?
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. Sorry. Okay. The difference between Hong Kong.
Similarities and
Yeah.
differences.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. From Thailand and the other regions. So Thailand and Malaysia. I analyzed Hong Kong, Thailand, and um, Thailand and Malaysia, basically. So these three countries, so Hong Kong and Malaysia are quite similar in the sense that they are all blocking controversial websites like pornography, provocative attire, and also gambling websites. And whereas Hong Kong isn't blocking any of those websites for some reason. But Hong Kong is also they are also blocking of a lot of government or military websites, specifically U.S. military websites. Apparently, there were geo block. It wasn't blocked from within the country, but it was blocked outside the country. And another differences is that Thailand has no new blockings in this study period. The latest major blocking will happen around in last year, I think in February 2022, where a campaign website a petition website was blocked, like change.org was blocked since 2021. So after those blockings, there haven't been any major blockings recorded in Thailand, and the results that we found are all websites that haven't been unblocked so far. Yeah, so those are the ones that we found.
Thank you, Siti. So turning to Fernando, I would like to ask you a question because iMAP monitoring work, it began at a very critical time surrounding the election period in Timor-Leste. So looking at the measurements that are collected, was there any indication of censorship taking place during this sensitive period? Fernando, you're muted.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I think people are looking for a solution and understanding on the problem of internet issues in Timor Leste. And this measurement is very important because not just it took place in a period of transition or coalitional politics in Timor Leste, but also it reveals it tends to respond on how state tend to become more authoritarian in Timor Leste. They created law, they create a new legislation, they create a new institutions, and the UNI measurement are trying to monitoring all of those behavior, whether it can lead to the internet censorship, blocking, and surveillance or not. But finally, we found there is none, and luckily, and I the measurement are in here. We tend to look at the uh, four ISP in here. Hello,
Yes,
can,
yeah.
can anyone hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. It looks like we have a little bit of technical issue. Fernando, if you can hear us, perhaps switching off the video would be better for the connection. In the meantime, perhaps I could direct another question maybe to Kyril. Kyril, so because looking at Philippines, having undergone these leadership transitions with the return of the Marcos family in power, so it has been over a year now. What do you see is different now in terms of internet censorship under the Marcos Jr. administration?
Right. I think when we talk about internet censorship in the Philippines, one very important aspect that we need to look at is media freedom. Simply because, like what our report documented, the internet is relatively freer in terms of censorship, but the kind of hostility towards journalists, towards the media, has a spillover effect on internet freedom in the context of the Philippines. It's a little bit difficult to make side-by-side comparison between Duterte and Marcos Jr. administrations. At this point, we're still in the early days of Marcos Jr. He only took office in, in just over a year ago. So, but looking at the big picture, right? The Duterte administration was defined by extrajudicial killings, by war on drugs, by red tagging of activists and journalists, by hostility towards the media. So of course, just on that basis alone, there's the contrast between Duterte and Marcos Junior administrations quite apparent. And if we look at the public statements and speeches from Marcos Jr., in a lot of ways, I'd say he's trying to redeem the family name, right? Marcos Jr.'s administration is putting a lot of focus on uh, economic development, on agricultural reforms and social mobility, but human rights and democracy reform um, is not really part of the agenda. And quite interestingly, one of the first things that he did when he took office was to abolish the Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission and also the Cabinet Secretary Office. And when we spoke with media practitioners in the Philippines, they are very concerned about the possible return um, of restrictions on media freedom, um, and freedom of expression in general, like what Philippine people experienced during the martial law period. And here's why. So if you connect the dots, with a lot of public money pouring into economic development, with weakened public oversight at the highest level of the government, with the president's seemingly high level of approval rating, with the country's pretty unique position in this whole U.S.-China rivalry. Like, it's hard not to see how all these factors you know might help Marcus Jr. to consolidate more power, and all this might potentially lead to kind of to corruption at a scale that we probably have never seen before in the Philippines. So here again, investigative journalists, independent media organizations have an even more important role to play today and for the next 4 or 5 years of Marcos' administration. And the president has all the buttons and levers that he could use to cut media freedom, right? And by extension, internet freedom. The sense that I got from human rights defenders that we spoke to is that it's only a matter of when and how he uses them. And we're watching very closely, the political appointments that the president makes. We need to, you know, have more oversight over public agencies like the National Telecommunications Commission, like the Securities and Exchange Commission, because these agencies have in recent years been used to target activists and journalists, like what we've seen happen to Rappler and Mara Reza. And of course, we need to pay more attention to um, Congress and the judiciary. Um, what we have also captured in our work is the SIM card registration law. So Duterte vetoed the SIM card registration law largely because of public pressure and opposition from civil society. But when Marcos got elected, Congress passed the same law again, and the president approved it. So to my mind, this really signals that Marcos Jr. is a lot more aligned with the lawmakers in the Philippines when it comes to, uh, you know, not promoting uh, and protecting human rights and democracy in the Philippines. And when activists in the Philippines tried to challenge the constitutionality of the SIM card registration law, they the Supreme Court didn't seem to be seriously considering the case that they're putting forward. That is still ongoing, and I think we need to watch closely, like what how that plays out. And I think finally, like like many people have actually talked about how Marcus Jr.'s rise to power was rife with electoral disinformation, right? So this just could go many different ways. We are worried about the kind of disinformation perpetrated by his political supporters seeping into government machinery. We are concerned that Congress might look at enacting new laws, strengthening existing laws that target more journalists, more media organizations who expose their alleged corruption and misconduct. So it's really important to observe what the direction that the Philippine legislators going to take in the next year or so, because the next congressional election will be in 2025. So when it comes to the issue of online political disinformation and on internet freedom in general, we've got to be ready for that, because I think there'll be a slew of more changes or encroachment on internet freedoms that might come in the coming years.
Thank you, Cairo. You share a lot and give us a lot of context on what is happening in Philippines right now, and it's very concerning that you disclose a lot of things that sort of end in a very pessimistic note in terms of the patterns that we would be looking at in future. So so I have a very similar questions to Siti, because in Malaysia, we also have a new government that came in since November 2022. So under this unity government, what do you see is the current trend of internet censorship?
Yeah, I think I think we see also similar trend in Philippines and also in Malaysia. So actually, it's quite a bit strange, inconsistent in some ways, because the blockings actually started to happen before the elections. Like it was done by the Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission, and then it continued, but until now, where there were more blockings of independent news websites as well as political blogs that were criticizing politicians and so on. So a number of websites were found blocked, like Malaysia Today, Malaysia Now, even former MP blog, richukyong.com, samudra.my, TV for TV, and also the Corporate Secrets. So these websites have already apparently have content. When these have content that are misleading, when this were what the MCMC has claimed to be, when the website's owner questioned the action of blocking. So and it is quite worrying on the concerning on this trend, because they suddenly block without any notification to the owners, the website's owners, or even the public before they blocking. They so suddenly some people on certain networks cannot access the website. And it is also concerning that the ISPs are also inconsistent with the blocking. So sometimes this ISP will be blocking from only this three ISPs will be blocking, and the others ISPs are not blocking. So the users on those websites can access. There are also unblockings at different timings. Some just continues to block even when the rest of the ISPs have unblocked it. So it is a very different and inconsistent pattern that we are seeing. So so this is the pattern that we see now. Although it's a very small number of websites, most of the websites that are blocked is actually pornography, gambling, as well as scam. I think a few days ago, the minister Fahmi, he also answered in Parliament about, I think, 2,000 or 3,000 websites were found actually blocked because of those pornography or gambling reasons. And actually only, I think about 10 websites were only blocked because of hate speech or fake news, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, this is the trend now in the new government.
Thank you, Siti. So I just want to go back to Fernando. Fernando, could you hear me? Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes. So to just get back to your answer earlier, you were saying that there was no censorship confirmed to be found during the election period. Would you like to explain more that perhaps what sort of challenges that you face when you were carrying out the monitoring work?
Yeah. Before I answer the questions, because this is the ironic situation in Timor-Leste. What we found is that, we tend to see that it is either the government or the ISP in here who are doing the block or etc. whatever. But it's something that happens beyond that situation, like because in here what we that I think the only as well we want to find out more is that how those in opposition are working with the ISP and they are destabilizing anything like lowering the internet connection so that they can destabilize the government. I think that's one of the main challenge and remain question that we need to answer and we need to go beyond and find out because we always tend to see that either by the government or ISP working together to make a censorship but in here what we suspect is that because our measurement also shows those things because the anomaly mostly occur in the telco company, in the private telco companies who are very work closely with the oppositional political party in here, and I think that's need more further investigation that need can be justify all of those findings and so regarding the questions like and also this measurement we tend to see there are more than 10 ISP but we only see 3 in plus 1 because the 3 in here we call them a triad because they are the dominant ISP market provider in Timor-Leste, they accumulated wealth and so on. But there are also one ISP who are owned by Timorese businessmen and there's three, the triad, the dominant one are the ones are dominated by the government of Timor-Leste, and the other one from Indonesia, and then Vietnam owned the Vietel or Telemor. So those are also a pattern that categories that we want to identify. And regarding the challenge, I think the challenge coming because uh, we until now cannot find any news, any credible news that can cover about the blocking or censorship, because there's none. There's no publication yet about this. But so far, as we have discussed with our cyber community, journalists, and so on, uh, the government and cyber community and IT institutions in here, they need legal framework so that can allow them, so that can authorize them to make a censorship, surveillance, and so on. When we ask about their capacity to block, etc., and so on, they say that they have those capacity of censorship, of blocking, and so on. But the things that need to allow them is that legal framework. That is the main point. Is that why the government of Timor-Leste proposed several laws, like a cybercrime law, data protection and privacy law since 2001 and 2002, 2001, no, 2021, sorry for that. In 2020, the government proposed a not proposed, but to restore the reintroduction of the criminalization of defamation into a penal code. Those are the one packet that can justify the government to uh, make an interference to the private communication and digital spaces in Timor Leste. And yeah, so far there's no confirmation of blocking censorship and so on that we can find in ONI measurement. And as far as we discuss and we see the government report, and there's none of censorship took place. And yeah, over to you,
Thank
Kelly.
you. Thank you, Fernando, for sharing this. So it seems that even though there's no confirmed censorship found for now, but Timor-Leste seems to be facing a different issue in terms of connectivity, and it could be due to suspected political or economical reasons behind it. So Timor-Leste seems to be facing a different sort of challenge as compared to the rest of the Southeast Asia region in that sense. So I just want to go back to perhaps Kairu and Siti in looking at the situation in Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, what do you hope to see from the regulatories or even the authorities? What do you hope the changes to be seen from them when it comes to internet censorship? So perhaps my question, in other words, what would you suggest to them to enable more transparency in terms of censorship here?
Do you want to go first, Siti?
I can say for maybe Malaysia. So because I'm more familiar with what the advocacy here, I think if we can recommend something, we would recommend the MCMC, the Commission, to implement it more transparently. We hope that you can notify the public or even the website owners uh, before they block, and what specific reason they are blocking the websites for before the blocking is done, so that it is transparent and that we can uh, see what we can hold it accountable if there are any reasons that are not justifiable. um, I think we can see that. I think in this case, I think Indonesia would be the most like they are the only ones. They are the only country, I think, in the among the 10 iMAP countries who have a block list published in the website, which is very transparent. But they also block a lot of websites. But that's Cairo to explain more. Yeah.
I think, yeah. Well, so in Indonesia, there's Trust Positive, which is the essentially the government block list, the internet filtering system that they have. Um, it's it's more transparent in a way, but I think there's still a lot of issues around arbitrariness. You know, how websites get put on the list, or why. It's there's no kind of direct and clear process to find out these things. And if you found that your website got blocked on the list, uh, there's no process. There's no clear process to get it unblocked, right? So there is a lot of kind of still, I think, due process is a very important issue. The Ministry of Communications in Indonesia, they're very, very proud. When they block websites, they would publish all the statistics. They will list, we have blocked all these websites in all these categories, and every year they update that. So it seems like there's a very what I like to call the oppressive minds of these internet regulators. They're more sophisticated. They're more um, advanced when it comes to how they do internet censorship, right? But that does not translate into actual better regulation, better access to information and ideas online. It doesn't translate into more free and open society. It doesn't translate into better um, uh, platform accountability when it comes to human rights violations, discrimination, inequalities. So the problem is there, like the intended um, and privacy actually was one big thing. Like if you think about the recent ban on the TikTok shop, for example, the government said, "Oh, we do not want social networking data to leak into um, um, e-commerce, right, or e-commerce leak, the e-commerce data leaked into social networking. They're quite sophisticated in the language or the oppressive language that they use to, to kind of, make internet censorship happen. But the question is, do censorship necessarily, protect internet users' privacy, uh, and online freedom of expression? I would argue it doesn't.
Thank you, Carol. I'm glad that you brought up Trust Positive. In fact, I believe the readers would be also be curious since Trust Positive has already published all these lists of blog websites. So when doing this iMAP project monitoring, how do the findings differ from each other?
So just to give a bit of background, so Trust Positive is essentially a centralized block list maintained by the Director General of Informatics under the Ministry of Communications and Informatics, right? The Kemkom Info. So all ISPs in Indonesia must use Trust Positive block lists and comply with it. So all 5,000, 6,000 ISPs in Indonesia. You can go to the Trust Positive website and check if your website is blocked. And like I said, there's no kind of clear process of how to get your website unblocked or to find out how or why your website got blocked. So what we did for the year 2 report, we took all the UNI confirmed block sites from July 2022 to June 2023 and checked every single domain or every single confirmed block domains against Trust Positive in July this year. So we found out that around 80% of the UNI confirmed block domains listed on the block list. So there's around 20% gap, right? So that's 80% out of 780 confirmed block domain names, and there are a number of possible explanations to why the 20% or the 150 something domain names blocked by ISP but not on the Trust Positive block list. So some of these websites were at some point temporarily blocked back in 2020. What year are we now? 2022. Because because they did not comply with the PSE registration law. PSE is essentially online platform, and back in 2020, 2021, 2020, the ministry actually mandated all manners of online platforms, or the technical term that they use is on electronic system operators. They need to register with the government, and failing to do that, their system will be blocked on in Indonesian network, right? So some of these affected websites that we were able to confirm using UNI data as well were like PayPal, like Epic, Origin, Yahoo, a number of other websites. So common ones, right? And obviously, these kind of cases do not represent the whole 20% gap that I spoke about earlier, that were confirmed blocked but not on the government block list. So what we did was we looked into the different categories of block sites. Interestingly, because the way the government report their block sites, they have categorization as well, and we can make some comparison on some categories. So if you look at the 80%, it's not 80% across the board, right? So for example, if you look at UNI confirmed block websites related to religion, only about 60% are on Trust Positive. So the gap is even wider. It's 40% blocked. Now these websites are not electronic systems, right? They're not really they don't have the need to comply with the PSE registration regulation, because they're just general information websites, and most of them are for what we found, most of them are for minority religious groups, but they're not specifically catering to internet users in Indonesia. And we found the same kind of situation with websites in a few other categories. So e-commerce, hate speech, file sharing, media sharing. So around 70 to 70% of the UNI confirmed block domains in these categories are actually on trust positive. So the gap is fall below the 80% still. So in contrast, if you look at pornography, for example, the number is closer to 100%, right? So 100%, almost around 90% of confirmed block domains on UNI are on the trust positive list. So that is evidence that the trust positive is a quite robust system, and it being centralized and having ISPs. There's high level of compliance, so it's very, very effective. But I think the more interesting part is the much bigger gap between the UNI and the trust positive when it comes to religion, for example, right? And we found that this gap is an indication that some ISPs are actually potentially blocking certain websites at a higher rate, unilaterally, without specific government mandate. So we need to investigate further and really ask more questions to the authorities, to the ISPs. They need to really kind of explain why there's this gap. Are there maybe other systems or processes that ISPs are using for content filtering that is not that is beyond trust positive, or do they perhaps get requests from pressure groups, from other authorities to to block certain content? So those things, I think, something that we need to investigate further.
Thank you, Carol. It seems that these ISPs are doing more proactively, doing additional stuff that the government do not require them to block. So I'm glad that iMAP research managed to find these out, the findings. So just want to get back to Fernando on the work that we are carrying out under iMAP. Is there any sort of support that you would need? Because you seem, Timor-Leste seems to be in a different situation from the rest. What do you think you yourself, the researchers, or even the local community will need in carrying out the monitoring work in Timor-Leste? Yeah.
UNI tools is very important. Like all those things, civic tools like this needed to be socialized and introduced more into the society, because as in highlighted in the report, it can because so many people, they when they feel discontent with the ISP service and government, they just sorry.
Yes,
Now
I
that
can hear
I muted.
you. I can hear you. Yes.
So everybody was thinking that, oh no, everybody was just put express their grievance in social media without any further systematic challenge for the ISP and government. Even the ANC, the National Authority on Communication, they provide, because when we interview them, they also say that their prime concern was to provide compliant mechanisms to the citizens, to the internet user, to the customer, so that they can feel any complaints against the ISP or the government. But those systems of complaints are not very advanced. They're not very effective in hearing and receiving the public complaints, so that they can hold the ISP and government accountable in transparency. At the other, we also have various and many NGO who also promote those things, like promoting consumer rights to have access of information, knowing any things that are available in the in the internet, and so on. But there is also not very effective in holding all of those ISP and government in accountability and transparency. But this, I think this it leads to what we need to have more support like this, because This like only can allow everyone in here to identify, because one of the major concern in here not simply um, website blocking or surveillance, but it more on the wide accessibility of the internet with affordable, with quality connections and so on. Those are the major concern that the Timorese public always uh, complain about, always share the concern. And UNI tools, in this case, very important, because in the previous government, they say that the internet connections are very problematic until now, because there are also regular internet shutdown, um, the poor connections for the whole, even the several case, the internet are loose for half a day in Timor-Leste, especially even in Dili, in capital city. But who is holding those ISP accountable? Like, they must clarify anything to public that this is the situation, this is the problem, but there is none. There is no recompensation for those who lose their money and data packet and so on. And the uni tools, like, because we also measuring, we also see the internet connections and performance. Uh, People are very angry with these issues, and we, with uni tools, we can identify those things. And the current government, they promised to settle all of those problems, but until now we still, with uni, we can see those constant low connections in Timor Leste. We can measure in for all those 3 and 4 ISP, and we can found those uh, constant uh, uh, low connections of internet in Timor Leste. I think those things we can use this only like using, because also in the workshop, local partner workshop, we also tend to socialize to our network that we can use the petition mechanism in here to fill the compliance using all of those information data that we got from the uni test and measurement and so on. And with this, I think we need more support so that we can introduce the uni tools into widely in Timor Leste, so everybody can know, and then they can use it to monitor the government and ISP.
Thank you, Fernando. Connectivity is indeed very important there. I'm glad that Timor-Leste found a different use case using Uni Probe app to measure the speed test and have it recorded. I hope that the community will continue to find it useful in future. So just to have a wrap up, I just want to address any sort of questions or comments in the chat box. Thank you, Nana, for your comments. We will continue to monitor the situation in Thailand, working closely with our partners. So there's a question from Sam. So he asks this question: how accurate is the data shown by UNI, and what does the margin of error look like? Perhaps Siti or Carol, would you like to take this question?
Okay, I'll briefly answer it first. Uni's data is based on blocking fingerprints. So these fingerprints are actually just indications of whether the website is blocked by a confirmed block by the ISP or government. So let's say when you access the block website, there will be a block page saying that the website has been blocked by so and so because of this law, or this website is not suitable. So these are the kind of things that were collected by Uni in a database called blocking fingerprints. And however, they are also showing, because Uni is also a tool that also measures anomalies. So sometimes the websites are inaccessible because the website is actually just down or no longer on active. And in some cases, maybe it is the user's internet connection or their device has some issues, and that's why it's showing anomalies. So it could be some false positives as well. There are also false negatives where it looks like it's not blocking, but it looks okay, but it's actually blocking. But that is more rare than the false positives. So the margin of error, So far, we haven't really measured, but I think there were studies on whether failures are blockings or not. So this is different across countries actually. Across the IMAP countries, failures most likely blockings, but except in India where it was found that it was I think 50-50. 50 was actually a false positive and a 50% was actually a true positive. So we took out failures as our potentially blocked websites. So that is one thing. It differs across countries, and like Kyrie has mentioned, the margin of error was like 20% according to the block list, and of course, being Indonesia being the only one that publishes the block list, uh, uh, we are actually not cannot confirm, of course, 100% whether our findings are actually reflect the block list of the government itself. So we just have to keep updating the test list and make more measurements because the governments are not telling us what they are blocking. So we are just testing on only as many websites as possible so that we can find the results. So yeah, this is I don't know if Karen wants to add on this.
I just have a kind of a note. I think this is something that we've been talking a lot about, kind of how uh, what is the intended use of the uni data, right? And because I don't know if you some of you might remember when we met in Chiang Mai earlier this year, there were all these questions around, can we turn this into an index? Can we turn this into a ranking? But I think at the end of the day, that's not the point of it, because the measurement relies on testing as a list, a smaller, a very very small sample of websites on the internet, right? So I think the greater use of the uni measurement data is evidence gathering. So what we need to do is gather the evidence, confirm the blockings, and use that for action. So it can be a challenge in court, it can be a campaign, it can be whatever, right? So I think that is the more kind of um, useful use of uni measurement data, and also to repeat what Kelly and CT said earlier. We need to improve the test list, because a lot of the times when we do our country partner sessions, um, we find it's a bit difficult to um, have websites to be categorized in certain categories. So one challenge that we faced was in Indonesia, for example, websites that uh, that were categorized as uh, militants, related to militant groups, um, or terrorism groups, simply because they have been designated as terrorists or militant groups by the Indonesian government. But in actual fact, they are more of a independence movement in Indonesia, right? Fighting for their own independence and self governance. So it's hard to kind of you know you know detach from that um, limit of the test list, because we still need to use the test list to ensure that we have good enough number of measurements that we can look at in a more standardized way. So yeah, so I think my point is the more important aspect of the uni data is evidence gathering for action. So I really think that we need to kind of go beyond looking at the data and analyzing, reanalyzing the um, margin of errors and the distribution. But whatever data that we've gathered, the evidence, we should do more with that. We should make a campaign out of it, challenge it in court. Back to you, City and Kelly.
Thank you, Cairo. Thanks for sharing your experience talking to the community and also your experience working with the people around you. You mentioned about how to use this data. Besides going to the court using it as evidence and also running a campaign, what do you think there are any sort of maybe use cases for these UNI measurements and evidence? How, or perhaps in other words, how would you wish to see that this data could be put in a good use?
Hmm. I think like the if you take, for example, in Indonesia, right? So the process is a lot more transparent. We can see that, you know, if you talk about marginalized groups in Indonesia, minority religious groups, LGBTQ plus persons, a lot of, you know, internet censorship fall within, you know, these um, areas. So I think that there needs to be more coordination within the civil society. Like, you know, how do we kind of translate um, the evidence that we have into action? So I'm thinking more along the lines of, you know, holding the government accountable within the international human rights framework. So Indonesia, for example, you know, is a has acceded to, you know, international human rights court treaties. So perhaps there is a important role that, you know, kind of the global community or the international human rights community can also play in terms of, you know, pressuring the government to reverse some of the harmful laws around internet censorship. Because a lot of times on the surface, the law itself don't seem to be problematic, right? So like if you look at the PSC law, for example, some people might, you know, argue that the PSC registration law can help, you know, in compliance with the new PDP law, with, you know, platform accountability. But in actual fact, you know, it has the unintended consequences of restricting, you know, freedom, and it not just, you know, internet freedom, but also, you know, in terms of discrimination towards uh, minority groups. So I think, going back to my earlier point about, you know, how the internet regulators, the lawmakers are so evolved and advanced and sophisticated, I think we advocates also need to be more advanced and sophisticated. So perhaps um, we need to look at, you know, the wider digital economy ecosystem. Perhaps you can find allies in the you know, industries, in the media, in tech, in financial services, because the restriction, uh, you know, the censorship, internet censorship, does not only impair human rights but also hurt businesses, right? And it doesn't bode well for, you know, a country like Indonesia, for example, that, you know, really, you know, one of the strongest, economically, one of the strongest countries in the region. I'm not sure if I'm answered your question, but
Yes, you did. You did. Yeah, I
that's
think
what
the
we can
civil
do.
society collaboration is really a good point to raise. So, I perhaps is there any questions from the general audience? Please feel free to post it on the comments, and I will direct them to the speakers. So, I would just want to know more about Indonesia because you mentioned something earlier about there are so many ISPs, and Indonesia is a rather big country. Do you see any sort of different applications of or implementation of censorship in different regions, or whether there's any indication that there's such trend?
That is something we have been interested about, but we haven't been able to really uh, kind of so because the way Uni is set up is, you know, we cannot really identify the specific ISPs. Well, we can identify the specific ISP, that we can't identify the locations, right? So we can look at, what we try to do is we look at the regional ISPs. So these are ISPs that are not, you know, based in, you know, central Java, or in Bali, or in, you know, the central Indonesia. So, but when we single out, when we, you know, pull out the data, We try to look at, ISPs in, for example, Sulawesi, in West Papua, and in Aceh, different parts of Indonesia. But the smaller ISPs, the data, do not, the smaller ISPs are not represented in the UNI data at the moment. So what I think we can do more is to basically have more probes running there. What we're exploring now is to basically send, Raspberry Pi with UNI on it to these regions, just so that at least we have some measurement of these small ISPs, and if we get consistent enough data, we can probably make that kind of comparison, whether there's kind of regionality to the censorship. Because I think this is also important, because we can see the gap with the trust positive list earlier, right? So that there's still more, as much as trust positive is a very efficient system for content filtering, it seems to us that there are more that ISPs are doing beyond trust positive. So if we can, have we can have more evidence around this to kind of back up our hypothesis. I think it would be great for next year. So stay tuned.
Thank you. I'm actually very excited with what you said, what you proposed. I hope that we can see it happening soon. So I believe we have no questions so far from the audiences. Just to perhaps have a quick shout out or to our audiences. Siti, could you show the last two slides where we can contain all the information, contact. So if you are interested to know more specifically about any countries that we covered, feel free to contact our partners or even just Siti or myself in general. These are the email contacts. And download our reports at imap.sinaproject.org. So I would like to thank thank you very much, Khairil, Zafri, and also Fernando for being part of this panel and together with us going through this launch. So I'm happy to excited to celebrate this with all of you and celebrating your hard work and effort putting into these reports. So besides having the reports, country reports, we also have other reports available on our website. Siti, can you show the next slide, please? So these are some of the reports that is also covered. You can find some of the updates on internet censorship in Malaysia, such as the elections and also specific websites like wichukyong.com, Malaysia Now website. And there are some other reports by our partners like Center for Internet Society has this report called Censor Watch to cover the state in India. And Engage Media also has this toolkit to address internet censorship and also content filtering. These are very useful tools. I personally find it myself too, very helpful for myself too. So thank you very much, everyone. And any comments and all that, please stay in touch. And you can always contact us using the details shown earlier. Thank you so much and hope to see you next year again.